My name is Anna, and this is the story I never thought I would tell. It's not easy to admit, but sometimes the heart makes decisions that the mind can never understand. This relationship not only brought with it torment, but also opened up an emotional abyss that I thought I could never escape. What started as a harmless joke gradually turned into something much more dangerous and complicated. My life has never been truly normal. I have always been the rebellious child in the family, the one who never met the expectations of my father, a strict man to the extreme, who always wanted to control everything in my life. When he suggested I spend the summer at my Uncle Robert's house, I thought it would be a chance for me to get away from the constant criticism and find some peace for myself. Robert has always been an attractive man to me, not only because of his tall, angular appearance but also because of his mysterious, free-spirited demeanor. While most men his age were settled with families, he was a freedom-loving man, a true adventurer. Since I was little, every time he came to visit during the holidays, he always brought with him interesting stories and strange gifts from all over. But this time was different. I was no longer the naive girl. At the age of 19, I began to look at him with a completely different eye. As soon as I arrived at his apartment in the heart of the city, the atmosphere seemed to have changed. At first I thought it was just the excitement of being temporarily away from the pressures of my father, but then I realized that my feelings for him were more than just admiration. His eyes contained something unpredictable, as if he was suppressing a deep emotion. Every time he looked at me, there was a curiosity mixed with a longing that I couldn't explain. That afternoon, as we walked around the park near our house, the tension between us was palpable. It wasn't the uncomfortable tension that comes with a fight, but a gentle but powerful tension, like an electric current running quietly beneath the surface. Robert, usually so lively, was strangely quiet that day. "Why are you so quiet?" I asked, trying to break the silence with a smile. He turned to look at me, and for a moment I felt like I could see through his thoughts, though he quickly looked away. "Nothing. I'm just tired," he replied, but his voice was not convincing. From then on, day by day, the tension between us became more apparent. We began to have more intimate moments, light touches and long conversations. Things that seemed harmless, but I could feel the strong attraction behind them. One evening after dinner we sat in the living room as usual. He poured another glass of wine, but this time, instead of sitting on the chair opposite me, he sat right next to me on the sofa. My heart fluttered, and although I tried to pretend not to notice his proximity, I couldn't stop my body from being alert. Then, I felt his hand, gently touching mine, just for a moment. But it was enough to light a fire inside me that I couldn't extinguish. I turned to look at him, hoping to find some sign that it was just an accident. But the expression on his face didn't change. We sat there, in the quiet living room of the city, with a tense silence. From that day on, the relationship between Robert and I became more and more ambiguous. Every time we walked around the park, or when we were together in the living room, the furtive glances and awkward touches seemed to last longer than necessary. I felt like I was being drawn into a powerful whirlwind of emotions, beyond my control. My heart pounded every time I was near him, and I began to feel that I was losing my way. One afternoon, it suddenly started to rain while we were walking around the park. Not having time to return home, we quickly sought shelter in the small greenhouse in the park, where Robert often went to read or store personal belongings. We were both soaked when we entered. Robert looked at me and gently handed me a towel to dry my hair, in the dim light of the greenhouse. When our eyes met, there was an intense attraction that no words could describe. We both felt something strong and unquenchable. As if he could no longer contain himself, Robert stepped closer, and before I could think, his lips touched mine, gentle but filled with desire. The kiss exploded amidst the rain outside and the silence around us. In that moment I felt a strong love from a man I should not have felt anything special about. Robert held me tight, and in his arms I felt like I had found a safe, yet dangerous haven. From then on, we continued those furtive moments, both in the greenhouse and in other hidden places. Every moment in the house, Robert and I found ourselves together, ignoring boundaries and indulging in deep emotions. My feelings for Robert grew deeper and deeper, to the point where I could no longer distinguish between right and wrong. But then the summer passed, and I realized the harsh reality: my father was coming to pick me up. Robert and I knew that we could not hide from the truth forever. The fear of being discovered weighed heavily on me, but every time I tried to be decisive, I was easily pulled back by his warm eyes and gestures. Finally, the day came when my father came to pick me up. I tried to keep my distance from Robert, but the tension between us was so palpable that even my father noticed something was wrong. That night, after my father had gone to bed, I decided to confront Robert one last time. I found him in the living room, sitting quietly in front of the window overlooking the city, the nightlight illuminating his face, looking thoughtful and conflicted. "This has to stop, Robert," I said, not daring to look him in the eye. He was silent for a moment, then sighed softly. "I know, Anna. I always knew this wouldn't end well." We looked at each other for a moment, and I knew it would be the last time. I decided to leave the next morning, carrying with me the conflicting memories and emotions of a relationship that was wrong but unforgettable. The next morning I woke early and packed my things in silence. The dim light from the window shone into the room, stirring a deep sadness within me. I knew that this would be my last day in Robert's house, a house that now held so many memories, both sweet and bitter. When I stepped out of the room, Robert was standing in the hallway, his eyes sad but calm. Neither of us said a word. We just looked at each other, silent and painful, as if every word was meaningless in this moment of separation. Robert stepped closer to me, placing a hand on my shoulder, as if to say that he understood all the emotions that were flooding my heart. "Anna," he whispered, his voice choked, "I hope you find peace." I said nothing, just nodded slightly, trying to hold back the tears that threatened to fall. After giving each other a final hug, I turned away, my footsteps heavy, as I left the house that had become so familiar. On the car ride home with my father, I told myself that I had to be decisive, to forget Robert and everything that had happened. But it was hard to do that when the memories kept flooding back, when everything in me was still as vivid as yesterday. Those secret moments kept haunting my mind, causing me deep torment, mixed with an inexplicable longing. When I returned home, I tried to return to normal life. My father had no idea what had happened, but gradually he noticed the changes in me. He often asked questions, worried when he saw that I seemed quieter, less smiling and talking than before. Every time I heard my father's words of concern, I felt more guilty and humiliated, because I had broken every moral code I had ever been taught. As time passed, I thought I would gradually forget Robert and the memories of the past. But then, one morning, I received news from a friend that Robert had an accident on a trip. Although it was not too serious, hearing that he had to be hospitalized, my heart ached. I tormented myself that I should not care, should not miss him anymore. But in my heart, the feelings for him were still there, like a wound that had never truly healed. One day I decided to write him a letter, not expecting a reply, just to vent the emotions that had been weighing on my heart for so long. In the letter, I told him everything I had never said, about my feelings, my longing, and my constant torment. I also told myself that writing those things was a way to close this tragic chapter. A few weeks later, I received a reply from Robert. In his letter, he shared that he had struggled to get over everything, that he felt as guilty as I did. But in the end, he realized that life had to go on. He said that although we had lost our way, he hoped that we could both find a new path to become better and stronger people after this mistake. Robert's letter helped me realize that sometimes, what we desire is not always what is good. We made mistakes, crossed boundaries that we should not have, and now it was time to accept the consequences. Gradually I learned to forgive myself. Although it was difficult, I knew it was necessary. Robert also found peace in his life. Our relationship ended, but it will always be a deep memory. a valuable lesson about love, desire and responsibility. Looking back, I see that I have matured, no longer the rebellious, impulsive girl I once was. The painful experiences helped me understand the value of loyalty, of the limits that we should not cross. I hope that my story will be a reminder to those who have lost their way that, sometimes, giving up is also a way to love more correctly. Life sometimes takes us to the wrong turns, where emotions and desires overwhelm reason. My story is a reminder that, no matter how strong our love or passion is, we still need to maintain moral boundaries. Moments of weakness can have painful and lasting consequences, not only for ourselves but also for those around us. Forgiving yourself is necessary to move on, but it is more important to learn to control your emotions and cherish the right relationships. Remember, giving up when necessary is also a way to love more fully and responsibly.